I will talk about my 3 ETF portfolio 2026. There are 3 ETF that I include to my main portfolio, and it's kind of big percentage of my portfolio. Before we move on with the ETF that I chose, maybe we should know the difference between stock versus ETF so we are all in the same page. The difference: stock is buying a share of one company, where the ETF is just like a basket. ETF itself stands for exchange traded fund. Within that basket, we have a lot of companies, let's say Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and etc. So it's very diversified, multiple companies. So that's the key difference between stock, buying a stock, and buying ETF. ETF is just like a basket. So the purpose of my ETF portfolio is to defensive part. So that's why it's going to be a bigger portion of my main portfolio. And I want to construct a dividend. It's kind of, we can say a passive income, but it's kind of different. So dividend, you kind of get an income from that. You don't need to sell any shares. So that's why I want to have a dividend, to treat it like a spending account, and because of that I don't want to sell shares. And also this could be my retirement income account if I need it later. So the criteria for this ETF portfolio is dividend, because there is a famous 4% rule where you can just sell 4% of your investment. You technically can live off your assets forever, but we're gonna talk about that later maybe. So the requirement is dividends, it should be around 4% more or less, and average for 5 years it should be around 10%. Minimize country bias, because I don't want to very specific, maybe in European countries only, in US only. I want to very diversify. And expense ratio, basically like a fees for people that provide the service, this ETF, should be very minimal, less than 0.1%. And the total stocks should be more than 100 stocks, because I want to make it more very diversified. And also you should have I'm gonna mention the function, and maybe also the weight of each ETF. So the first one is HGHD, which is a swap US dividend equity. For 2026, I saw a dividend around 3.24%, and for 5 years on average the capital gains appreciation is around 8.7%. But the country is only in the US. Expense ratio is 0.06%, and the total stocks is around 100 companies. So the function for this specific ETF is US quality and dividend. And the weight for this specific ETF is around 40%. Next one is VYMI, Vanguard International High Dividend Yield. The dividend is kind of similar like the HGHD, around 3.38%. Average for 5 years back is around 12%. And the country, this is pair with the HGHD, because the HGHD only US. For this one is international. Anything outside the US is very basically global except the US. And expense ratio, a bit expensive. It's not like that expensive. It's around 0.07%. The total stocks around 1600 companies. So this is a very diversified. The function of this specific ETF to pair up with the HGHD for diversification, of course, and excluding US, and also for dividend. This weight around the same 40%, just like HGHD, because this is to pair with HGHD. VT, next one, Vanguard Total World Stock. Dividend is quite low, it's 1.59%, average for 5 years around 10% or 11% maybe. And for this one, it's a global, so 60% US and 40% rest of the world. Expense ratio around 0.06%, and total stocks is 10k companies, so really diversified. So this the function of this ETF for diversification and also world blend. So 60-40% for the country is gonna be automatic, and the weight of this specific ETF is around 20%. So in summary, this is my composition summary. I tried 40-40-20. I tried 30-33 balance everything, 20-25-50. But as you can see from the summary, annual return specifically in yield and balance, 40-40-20 is the best formation for this ETF, my ETF portfolio. So you can pause the video if you want to see, but in short, initial ETF criteria and my final ETF. So in terms of dividend, I aim for anything around 4%. As you can see, the yield is 3.98%. So I would say dividend is around 3-4%, and the average for 5 years should be more or less 10%. But this one overperform is around 14%. For the countries, it's a world blend, so there's no specific country bias, and the expense ratio is less than 0.1%. Very good. And the total stocks is more than 10k company, so it's really diversified. And this final ETF function as income and diversification, and the weight is again 40-40-20. This is the best formation that I tried. So to sum it up, my 3 ETF portfolio 2026, at least for 2026, the VT is 20% and SGHD 40%, and the VYMI 40%. So all of this gonna be my final ETF portfolio, at least in 2026. But I hope to never sell this in the future, but we will see. And the next is my cash equivalent option 2026, because this is not gonna be my portfolio, but it's gonna be included because this is for my expense basically, because at the end I want to use that money for my purposes. So there's 3 assets that I consider as my cash equivalent to park my cash basically for 1 to 3 years of expense. So I'm able to live without my investment, just using this my equivalent option for at least 1 year. July 14, 2026, as you can see, the market basically red except the SCHT ETF. Just like usual, I add another $10 for all of those 4 assets that I used to buy every 2 weeks. So we're gonna start with our control. Our control is Syrup USDC. Anything that more than 255 is a good asset to invest, but anything below our control or baseline, which is Syrup USDC again, anything below the 255 is bad asset for invest. As you can see, for example, because we know Syrup USDC is 255, SPYX is a good investment because we have 269. You can ignore this Solana, that is only for gas fee. And we can see the wrap Bitcoin is $194, which is we're still under the water. And how about kaspa? Kaspa, we have 6,579 kaspa, but estimate value is 187, which is currently the worst asset that we have amongst those 4 assets. And we're still down minus $74 or minus 20 8%, but our average though it's 0.03. So that's all the DCA performance for our portfolio. So that's all for today. So